And we are back here on the Real Estate Coffee Break, the John Adams radio show, the Doctor of Democracy, seated firmly in the free enterprise chair. And speaking of free enterprise, I have here one of the soldiers of liberty. Tyler Jones joins me literally from the headquarters of CarmichaelConsulting.net. And we are here to talk about a hacking threat for small to medium-sized businesses. I thought, Tyler, this whole thing was about Colonial Pipeline and multi-billion-dollar businesses, and now somebody tells me, hey, they may be coming after realestatecoffeebreak.com. Is that a reality?
It is, and we've seen this evolve a lot over the last several years. When I first started Carmichael Consulting about 11 years ago, I came from the banking industry and a lot of high security environments.
Sure.
But the trends I was starting to see develop was that the bad guys, as big businesses spent more and more on protection, were targeting smaller businesses. And we've seen that continue to evolve over the last several years. And so businesses of all sizes these days absolutely have to be cognizant of the security threats out there and make sure that they're taking active steps to protect themselves.
Wow. All right, well, let's dive right in. I know you've got some slides here. Oh, they're on the screen. So we're in good shape. And by the way, your website is CarmichaelConsulting.net. If folks want to reach you, they can jot that down. Why don't you just lead us through some of these data points here? What are we talking about?
Absolutely. So we continue to see an evolving threat in the number of breaches that occur for small and medium-sized businesses. As you referenced earlier, big businesses have been getting hit for years, and we've all seen those headlines, whether it was the Target breach or the Sony hack or pick one, and there have been plenty of them. But as big organizations got hit more and more, they had the capital and the money to start spending on shoring up defenses. So the bad guys start then targeting the next tier down. And that's one of the risks, is that a lot of small and medium-sized businesses don't have the resources to invest in their own security. And that opens them up to a lot of risk. And we see more and more these days in cyber insurance policies and things like that, the demands for those businesses to make sure that they're adequately protected are increasing every day, both from a risk factor and from an insurance factor. And so it is something that business owners have to be paying attention to. And there's a lot of...
But I don't think many are. I mean, I'm not. I have Windows Defender. We do back up occasionally. But why would anybody come after me? I mean, I'm a small business.
Right. And that is one of the reasons, is that small businesses do have a lot of valuable assets when it comes to technology. So you think about, as a small business owner, if you lost your QuickBooks file, if you're using QuickBooks desktop and not online, if you think about your contact databases, if you think about if you've got electronic contracts that are on your computer, you think about all of that important data. Again, the bad guys don't necessarily care about if it's important to them. They care about if it's important to you, because you're the one who's going to be paying the ransom. If you had a kid you didn't particularly like and a kid never took them, we don't know what your response might be. But if it was your favorite child, why, my goodness, you're going to pay that ransom. So it is a case that, again, you're in that kind of sweet spot where small businesses and medium-sized businesses have a lot of data that is critically important for them to continue operating. And the bad guys know that, and they may not necessarily be investing in the right protections to make sure that that data isn't at risk.
All right, well, our time is very limited here, so let's jump right in. Why do cyber hackers go after small business?
Sure, so they're looking for targets of opportunity. And unfortunately, there's a lot of different things you have to protect yourself against. It's not like the old days. There's a point at which, John, you and I remember this. You said, if I have Norton antivirus on all my computers, I'm fine. I don't need to do anything else.
That's what I thought.
And those were in the days before everything was connected to the internet, before you had email threats, before you had, patching updates coming as regularly as they do. There's just a different world than it was when a lot of people started their small businesses, and they haven't evolved their response and their posture in response to the threats that are out there. And so that's the big challenge.
I saw this point here where it said IBM found last year that the cost for 95% of the incidents fell between $826, which I might be willing to pay, and $653,000, which I probably would not be willing to pay. Is it just whatever they think they can get?
It is. And unfortunately, this has turned into a business. I mean, this kind of cybercrime is a multi-billion-dollar a year business. It is astonishing when you start looking at the numbers around how big of a business it is. And just like anything else, the bad guys are looking to make whatever the market will bear. So if they get into a small 2 or 3 person business and they can basically encrypt your files and demand a ransom out of you, maybe they only get $500, maybe they only get $600, but they're going to get something out of you because you've got to have those files to continue operating your business. If not, you're going to have to shut down. So comparatively, they know how to assess what they can get out of you and where that falls. And yeah, we hear about the big headlines, the Colonial Pipeline, and that was tens of millions of dollars. When the city of Atlanta got hit by this a few years ago, the bad guys were demanding $50 million or whatever the number was. The shocking part is for businesses that don't pay it and weren't ready for it with good backups and things like that, and we'll talk about that in a second, they wind up spending actually a lot more money than the ransom to recover. Now, we always advise people don't pay the ransom. You're only encouraging that business to continue. But if the businesses didn't have a good strategy in place to make sure they could recover from it, it can be incredibly disruptive, if not end the business if you're not ready.
Let me ask you, help my memory, because the older I get, the less I remember. What's your name again? Oh, Tyler Jones. Didn't Colonial end up paying something like $40 million in Bitcoin or something?
Yep.
And didn't the FBI, in sort of a hush-hush operation, get back some of it?
Yeah, the FBI was, and that was a big win for the good guys, because this is one of the big caveats to all of this is Bitcoin, and the fact that it has limited traceability has really, unfortunately, enabled a lot of this. Now, however you feel about Bitcoin, it is the payment method for this, because let's face it, the bad guys are holding you ransom and they say, hey, send me a check and here's my mailing address. That's pretty traceable. You can go get those guys. When you put it into a currency like Bitcoin that has very, very, very limited traceability, that's where these guys can get away with this stuff. And it is incredibly hard to recover that. So the federal government, as well as a lot of other international authorities, are starting to take procedures to where they can recover some of this. Good. And until we make this unprofitable, the bad guys aren't going to stop. They're spending almost nothing to complete these attacks.
Yeah.
And even if you only make $826 off of an attack that costs you $10 to run, that's a profitable business, unfortunately. And until we make it unprofitable, or
that's better than real estate. If you can invest $10 and get back $800,
even in this market.
I can't do that well. So we talk a little about basic security software. You mentioned Norton antivirus, which I thought was the end all be all at one time. But how can we have a fighting chance against these attacks? Does basic security software play a part?
It does, but there's a lot of components to it. And as I talked about a second ago, there are a lot of different ways the bad guys are trying to get at you. And you really have to look at this holistically and make sure that you're protecting yourself against all of those avenues at which they might get at you. And so security software, whether that is traditional antivirus, the latest and greatest is called EDR, or endpoint detection and remediation, or endpoint detection response, is a little bit more advanced. It's looking for behavioral patterns and things that are high risk and prevents those from infecting the machine or additional machines on your network. But there's also having network security with firewalls. There's also using multi-factor authentication, which you and I have preached the positives of for years and years and years, starting back when Google first started rolling that out many, many, many years ago. There's also making sure,
Well, you had said there were 3 specific things, and we're running out of time, but 3 things, if somebody has a small business or is a realtor or maybe even a law firm, small to medium-sized law firm or real estate brokerage, what are 3 things that they might want to take away from this discussion? What are some things they ought to be thinking about?
Well, the first one is one that you and I, again, have preached about for years, and that's backup. Good backup is always your last line of defense. If everything else goes wrong, that's what keeps you operating. And whether you're using Windows backup or you're using Time Machine on a Mac or you're using a third-party tool, good backups are absolutely your saving grace if everything else just goes wrong. So backup, backup, backup.
The price has come down on that some, hasn't it?
Way down. And whether you're using the freebies that are built into your operating system or whether you're paying for something like Carbonite or Crash Plan, yeah,
Right.
they're very reasonable. And again, it is an insurance policy that you can't be without.
Okay, let's move on to number 2.
Absolutely. Encryption software these days is built into all modern OSs. Windows and Mac both have built-in encryption software. One of the reasons we always tell customers to make sure that they're getting Windows 10 or 11 Professional is that that's the grade at which this is included for free. So make sure that if you're using Windows, yep, you get Windows 10 or 11 Pro, because that's going to include BitLocker. And BitLocker is Windows built-in encryption software. On the Mac, you're going to be using a tool called File Vault 2. They both do the same thing. They keep the data on your computer encrypted, which makes it harder for the bad guys to get at your data to impact it. It also keeps you protected if your computer gets lost or stolen, because you don't want somebody else to be able to get to your important data just because they picked up your laptop from the X-ray scanner tray at the airport.
You know, it's interesting because, as you know, Margie and I are very active at our church, Westminster Presbyterian over here, and our technology manager, who is a heck of a nice guy, took a laptop and somehow it got stolen. And it theoretically had things on it that the church would just as soon not anybody know about.
Sure.
And I don't know. I'm assuming it was backed up. I'm assuming it was encrypted. But is there one other thing we ought to be thinking about?
Yeah, for online accounts in particular, and again, this is another one that you and I've talked about for a long time, two-step authentication or multi-factor authentication. They're used fairly interchangeably. And I won't get into the details between the differences, but it basically means that bad guys can guess your passwords. They can break into your accounts. What two-factor does is it adds another layer to that. And whether that is biometric security, which we see all the time these days, the facial recognition, fingerprint recognition, but also things like a special app or a text code that gets sent to your phone. So for example, if the bad guys happen to guess your password, John, they can't get into your email because as soon as they go in there and they try and log in as John Adams and put in that password, it says, okay, we're sending this code to your phone, or even better, to an app on your phone. And you've now got 30 seconds to enter that, or we're not going to let you in. Again, a password alone, if you've got this enabled, doesn't give the bad guys the keys to the proverbial kingdom, gives you a significant added layer of protection. And Microsoft's latest statistics say that with Office 365, having this enabled, and it's included for free, would stop like 95% of all Office 365 breaches.
Wow. Well, nobody will ever guess my password because I changed it to password 123. Isn't that safe?
It is still unbelievably a very commonly used password.
Very good. What is a risk assessment? And is this something that even small businesses ought to be thinking about?
It is. This is something a lot of regulated businesses have to do on a regular basis. So businesses that deal in financial trading, things like that, are required to do this. And we recommend that all businesses at least consider doing this. What it is two components. One is what's called a penetration test, which is you set up a test and it's acting like the bad guys trying to get into your network. That lets you know that if the bad guys can or could not just walk right into your network and start causing trouble. The other part of it is a vulnerability assessment, and that's done internally as though the bad guys somehow got into your network. Maybe there was a computer there that wasn't fully protected, or they guessed a password. How vulnerable is your network from the inside? Could they get to other systems? Are there patches that are missing? Are there other protections that should be in place and aren't? And those two components together give you a tremendous visibility into what your risks are and give you an actionable list of things to fix.
It's very interesting because for over 20 years, I served on the board of directors of a local community bank, very small bank, but we still were required by the Georgia Department of Banking and Finance to do these risk assessments. Yep. And this is the first time I saw them. I mean, I thought, I didn't even know the bank was at risk, but apparently it was. And they came and told us one time that they had found a vulnerability and that it needed to be corrected. We contacted our software people. They thanked us tremendously for bringing it to their attention. But nonetheless, these things go on in banking, but I think a lot of small businesses like me don't even consider this. Is this something that Carmichael Consulting will do?
It is. And for smaller businesses, we can actually do this for as little as $2,000. You then get back a full report of every vulnerability we're able to find using some of the best tools on the market. And it gives you, like I said, a very actionable list of findings and things you can do to start remediating those risks immediately.
I understand. It's carmichaelconsulting.net is the website. And by the way, folks, if you have not been to the website, this is a trip. I'm telling you, Tyler Jones has come up with the most beautiful website. It fades in and out like you're on some sort of carnival ride. I almost was willing to pay just to visit your site.
Well, it's free for everybody, John, so they're welcome to come check it out.
Okay, very good. It says here IT solutions for Mac, Windows, mobile, and more. And you go all over Metro Atlanta because I've seen you out in Decatur. We won't say why, right?
That's right. But we cover all of North Georgia. And honestly, we have customers all over the U.S. and into Western Europe. So we are happy to come work with any business anywhere and make sure that they've got the protections in place that they need.
Well, I love your motto here, stop ransomware before it starts, because this is the time to do it. 5-star Google rating, you can't beat that. And if I call you, I'm not going to be talking to someone in the Philippines, right?
No, sir. We're all right here in Roswell, Georgia.
Okay. And they can get hold of you at 678-7190-9671. Tyler Jones, Carmichael Consulting, as always, vital information for those of us that use computers. And I think we all do now. I don't know. It's so amazing to me, Tyler, that when I started in real estate, I'd never seen a personal computer. I knew about the punch cards and everything, but when the IBM PC came out, I thought, well, this is sort of a fad. This won't last. and boy,
it's not often you're wrong, John. That's a rare miss for you.
That's right. Well, what can I say? Tyler Jones, thank you so much for visiting with us. Hey, will you come back and see us and give us some more information?
Love to, John. Thanks as always.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.